I have lived and worked in war zones. I have done crazy things, and you all have me incredibly intimidated right now. I'm just going to I'm supposed to be vulnerable, right? So I'm putting it out there. I'm incredibly intimidated by all of you. Your theme is end. I'm an eradicationist. It's a word I made up. It doesn't really exist, but it speaks to my goal. I've been doing this for 23 years. This disease shouldn't exist. People shouldn't have this, and I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. I've got some graphic photos, so if anyone has a queasy stomach, I'm not going to give you forewarning for each photo, but just be forewarned. This is a horrible disease. People shouldn't have it, like I said. So, the end of a disease, what does that mean? There's a term called eradication, and in my world, that means the end. Globally gone. That means it's finished and it can never come back. There's only one disease that has been eradicated from the earth, and it's smallpox. And smallpox will never come back because of the tools that we have and what we did to ensure that we got it to the end game. So this disease is another end game. It's called guinea worm disease, or dracunculiasis mendonicis. It is a human parasitic disease. It is disabling and disfiguring. There's one right here. So she's no longer alive, but she is pretty powerful, despite the fact that she looks like a piece of spaghetti. What she does is invades the human body and grows to 3 feet in length. So from the end of my fingers to the tip of my shoulder, that's how long she gets. So just imagine you have a 3-foot-long worm coming out of your body. Again, guinea worm disease, dracunculiasis mendonicis. The first known writing of this worm was in 1530 BC. It is one of the most ancient parasitic diseases known to man or woman. It was quoted in the Bible, the fiery serpent. Many historians believe that it's the first known symbol of the medical doctor, the stick with 2 snakes wrapped around it. It is still the same extraction process we use today. Again, it's a very old disease. It's a cyclical disease as well. It is ingested. So let's say you're thirsty. You live in sub-Saharan Africa, it's 105 degrees, and you come upon a water source. You're out taking care of your animals. You come upon a water source and you just get down on your knees, you use your hands and you drink the water, right? Your thirst is quenched. Unwittingly and unknowingly, you have just ingested guinea worm larvae. For 9 to 12 months, you have no idea this is growing in your body. The guinea worm larvae go into your stomach, they mature, the male and female mate. The male dies because once he's mated, he's rendered insignificant, useless. Which is one of the reasons I love my job. Just so we're all super clear about that. My poor husband, I get to say this a lot, and he's like, I've heard that before. She then starts her growth. Powerful, amazing, 3 feet. She moves through the stomach lining, and then she starts moving through subcutaneous tissue. 9 to 12 months. Your body has no idea there's anything foreign inside of it. She moves through a sheath. Your white blood cells can't detect her until she finds a place to come out. And if you look at this picture, you'll see the man standing in the water, and you'll see the worm coming out. When she starts to come out, she burns. Remember, fiery serpent. It is so hot, she makes a very large ulcer, and in the middle of an ulcer, a blister. Through that blister, she pushes a toxin into the skin. The toxin burns, your skin opens, and she pushes her eggs into water, which you put your worm in water to make it cool, because it's burning, it's so hot. So as she goes into water, she lays all these eggs. And then again, you come along. You're thirsty. You're out taking care of your crops. You drink from that same water source, and the cycle begins again. This disease exists only in Africa, currently. It was in 21 countries when we began this crusade, and now we're only in 4. The countries that we're currently in: Ethiopia, South Sudan, Mali, and Chad. Those are the countries in red. All the other countries were in the process of certifying that they're free of guinea worm, or pre-certifying that they're free of guinea worm. Again, 3 feet in length. You don't know you have it until she starts to come out. And the other thing you don't know is how many worms are going to come out when she starts to come out. There was a woman that was documented. She had 64 worms coming out at one time. She did not survive. When the worm starts to come out, she engorges the entire area where she begins to come out. So imagine you have a guinea worm coming out of your foot. Your foot gets so big and so swollen, and then this worm starts to come out of your foot. She can come out of anywhere in the body, except for the eyes and the skull cap. She can come out of the skin across the top of the head. And we have several cases documented where she has come out of the top of the head. She can cause sepsis. And when this happens, a person might not make it through that point of their life. So remember, this is cyclical. She comes out every 9 to 12 months. And when she comes out, it's usually either harvest season or planting season. You're crippled, you can't walk. I've seen people, the first case I saw was in Côte d'Ivoire when I lived there. And it was a woman, and she was sitting with what appeared to be a child in her left arm. And she was sitting on a kind of a cement housing structure. And as I got closer to her, I realized that it wasn't a child she was holding, it was her left breast. A guinea worm was coming out of her nipple. The child that she was trying to breastfeed was next to her in a blanket. She couldn't breastfeed out of that nipple because of the guinea worm, and her breast was engorged with milk. She had 2 guinea worms on her left foot and 1 on her right foot. She couldn't walk, so she had to be assisted. It was the most horrific and harrowing thing I have ever seen. A 3-foot-long worm coming out of this woman in 4 different places. Now imagine you live in sub-Saharan Africa, you're a subsistence farmer. You have to gather your wood for your cooking. You have a guinea worm coming out, you can't walk. So you can't go gather wood. You can't gather crops to feed your farm animals. You can't harvest your own crops. If you're a child and your parent has guinea worm, you can't go to school because you have to take care of the animals. Your parent takes you from school. Or you can't go to school because you just can't concentrate. You can't walk. Again, it's a horrifying disease. It is 2019. No one should have a 3-foot-long worm coming out of their body. Everyone should have access to safe water. It is cruel, stigmatizing, and devastating. It is painful, and again, this is something that no one should suffer from. It is a disease of vast areas, absolutely vast. Rugged, vast areas where we have to walk 6, 8, and 10 hours to get to the populations that need help. It's a disease of massive logistical and infrastructure challenges and quite often danger. It is a disease of war-torn populations. Internally displaced people, refugees, special populations that are run from their homes by war. And they have to live in places such as this, with access to no healthcare services and no water. It is a disease of poor water quality. Imagine this is what you drink every day. It's called a neglected tropical disease. This is a special class of diseases of which there's 20. 1.2 billion people in this world are at risk for one of these diseases. They're neglected. To put this neglect into perspective, the neglected tropical diseases, of which there's 20, only get 1% of the entire global international development assistance. Whereas HIV/AIDS, which only affects about 40 million people, gets about 35%. If you have one neglected tropical disease, like guinea worm, or the other ones that Molly said, river blindness or trachoma, your immune system is weakened. So if you get TB or you get malaria, your inability to fight that off increases drastically. So you could get really sick really fast just by having one of these NTDs rather than being healthy. Carl Jung says that the creative mind plays with objects it loves. Well, we've devised things, tools, simple interventions to stop this disease, to end it. It is a program based, no cure, no vaccine. I forgot to mention that. We can't detect it once it's in the body. The only thing we can do is prevent this disease. So we teach people how to use filters. And we teach people through a group of us. We all recognize that guinea worm disease is a disease of poverty, and it is a disease that affects a certain number of people. And when I say we, I mean call him my boss. I hate that word boss, but it's me and former US President Jimmy Carter and my group of colleagues. We work together to end this disease. The Carter Center was established in 1986, and in that year, President Carter had seen a woman with guinea worm in Ghana, and he decided it was the International Decade of Clean Water Supply and Sanitation. 1981 to 1990, everyone in the world was supposed to get access to safe water. By 1986, there were still 3.5 million cases of guinea worm in 21 countries. People did not have access to safe water. So President Carter believes that good health is a basic human right, especially among poor people afflicted with disease who are often isolated, forgotten, ignored, and without hope. And President Carter decided that he was going to bring a group of the most eminent physicians and experts from around the world and put together an international task force for disease eradication, and we were going to prove to the world that guinea worm could end. And so that's what we've done, and that's what we do. Again, no detection test, no cure, no vaccine. We use simple prevention techniques and behavioral change taught through health education to ensure that when people are given the necessary tools, access to resources, and knowledge, they can change their own lives dramatically. So we have tools for change. And as I said, Carl Jung says, the creative mind plays with objects it loves. I love this disease because I hate it so much. I love what I get to do. I created 4 different kinds of filters that can fit a water barrel. I created a filter that can fit on top of a small jug. I created a different filter that can poke inside of a smaller jug. Technologically appropriate for the conditions people are living in. I created a pipe filter, which is a straw that people can wear around their neck. I stole this idea actually from a nomadic population in Mali called the Tuaregs. They were ingenious. They took reed that was growing by the ponds, and they cut the reed, and then they were given these big pieces of filter, but it was too big for them, so they cut small pieces. They put it on the top of the reed, and then they took reed twine, and they made a straw. I saw it, and I'm like, I'm so stealing that idea. Seriously, so in the middle of war-torn South Sudan, where I couldn't access hardly a fraction of the population, we made 9,285,000 of these and blanketed the entire population with this and a small piece of health education material, and we beaded them. That makes them sexy, right? So they were all totally into this and started using them. It was awesome. We use case containment centers. When someone has a worm coming out of their body, we put them in the case containment center so we ensure 100% they can't contaminate a water source. We use medical attention. We provide everyone with medical attention, and we still use the stick, and we wrap the guinea worm around it. If she breaks, she pulls back into the body, and she has a hook on the end of her tail. She will wrap herself around a tendon or a joint, and if she breaks and she goes back in, she will cause crippling. So we don't ever want her to break, and that's why we use the stick. We train people how to give health education. We use any type of artistic assistance that we can. We train them. You can see the flip charts that are there. We have flip charts in all the different languages. We have flip charts with no languages. A lot of people don't read. We train people how to give medical attention, how to give health education, how to pass the word. We treat the water sources with a chemical called a bait. It's safe. That larvae, when she gets put into the water, we treat the water source so those larvae just get drunk and they go to the bottom of the water source. So if you come along, Terry, and scoop up the water, you can't get any larvae because they're all at the bottom of the water source. We use people that have had guinea worm as water protectors. They sit and they do their housework or whatever work they need next to the water source, and they tell people with guinea worm, don't go in the water source. We have over 23,000 village volunteers right now. These people live and work in their communities, and they're dramatically changing each other's lives. We give health education over and over and over and over again. Has anyone here tried to change a behavior in their life? Anyone? Any behavior? How many times do you have to repeat this to yourself? Right? Just try and quit smoking. Just try and work out over and over and over and over again. And over again. And what we have found is that when people are given the necessary tools, knowledge, and access to resources, they're vigilant. They help each other. They see an end, and they want to get there. So what is the end? What does that mean to us? Where are we right now? Well, today, we have 19 cases reported in 3 countries through June. We've reduced guinea worm. We've reduced this disease by 99.9%. The end is in sight. More importantly to me, 80 million people have not had to suffer from a 3-foot-long worm coming out of their body. We estimate we've averted 80 million cases. And this doesn't just affect 80 million people, this affects their families as well, right? This affects gross domestic product, gross national product, socioeconomic status, educational status. This affects communities. 80 million people. And that, to me, I mean, that's an end. It's not the end, but that's an end. Like, wow, we did that. There's challenges, though, and eradication is a very interesting thing. Smallpox had massive challenges at the end game. We've got some challenges. We've detected guinea worm in dogs in Chad. So we have found that there is a morphology. We are not quite sure. Perhaps she has moved from humans to dogs. We've got a massive veterinarian staff now that we're working with, and we are detecting every case in dogs. I never thought that my career would go that way, but these things happen, right? We also, again, remember that decade of sanitation, safe water and sanitation I told you about from 1981 and 1990, where the entire world was supposed to have access to safe water? Well, those same 1.2 billion people don't have access to safe water. They still have to go into ponds and stagnant pools and collect their drinking water. So that's a major challenge. Finding all of these cases in these vast areas is a major challenge. This is Sudan. Sudan stands for the word Sud. Sud stands for swamp in Arabic. The entire country for about 4 to 6 months swamps out. So we have to still get in there and find any case, any rumor, any word that there might be a guinea worm. We can't stop at 1. This is end game. We must get to 0 and we have to prove 0. Every single country that I mentioned, Ethiopia, Chad, Mali, and South Sudan are war-torn. So every single one of these locations, every single time we go into one of these countries, we face the possibility of being caught up in a civil strife. It has happened to most of us, and it's something that we continually have to think about. And we think about this in a way that makes it all worthwhile. We persist. I have been honored to see myself in other people's eyes. I wouldn't want a 3-foot-long worm coming out of my body. I wouldn't want to be neglected. I don't think we should neglect anyone. I think we should get to 0 in an end game. So we're getting there, and this little girl won't have to have guinea worm disease. And it will be the end. And in the end, there's new beginnings. A world free from guinea worm disease. Thank you all very much. It was a pleasure.